people are hired to be smart creatives, right? And so being a smart creative means coming to the table with some ideas and together collaborating. So hey, Lauren, how are you?
Good, Lynette. I'm here in Seattle. Just got back from Austin. It's springtime here in Seattle now, and it was springtime in Austin just a couple of weeks ago. So I was there for the South by Southwest festival. It was an incredible learning experience, and it kind of also was another kind of prompt to the topic we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so you and I chatted earlier. What do we want to talk about today? And we are definitely going down the direction of peer-to-peer. So what is peer-to-peer? So we talked a lot about how in the past we've worked on programs and projects together where, you know, we've always had this sort of top-down leadership, command and control. Leader always tells the employees what they want them to do, and then they go off and they do it. But now, in this sort of day and age of innovation and disruption and really trying to get the best out of our people, and actually people wanting to show up to work and giving a better contribution, I think what we're seeing now is leaders really needing to be able to move away and kind of let go of that top-down command and control, coming up with all the ideas, and allowing peer groups to work better together and come up with better ideas. We've seen that in many situations where the best way to answer a problem is to let the people who face the problem answer it. So today's challenge is, how might we help our listeners move away from the command and control into more of a peer leading peer environment? So Lauren, what's the impact of not moving, not being that way, and then the impact of actually having to move that way?
Yeah. And I think the impact of not is that you're just too pedestrian. You're just too slow. Things moving up one lane, over to another lane, down another lane. It can be comfortable because that's been the historical way that things have been done, but it's just too slow. And when people are talking about innovation these days, or even being disruptive, intentionally disruptive, that means it's a two-way agreement between the leadership structure and people who are not in formal leadership. I mean, everybody has to get involved. Everybody's got a role to play in this. Leaders have got a responsibility to create conditions for that to happen, make it okay. And team members have got to decide that they're not going to just wait around, that they're going to have the courage to connect a solution with a problem, that they're going to reach out in places that historically they may not have gone because it's been defined by it's not my department. But that's just not the way organizations need to organize these days. Yeah, you need the historical org chart needs to be there in some kind of way to give some sense of clarity. But frankly, it's not a reflection around how things are going to get done.
Exactly. So yeah, so leadership creating the conditions, but then also for the individuals who are sharing their ideas, it takes a real mindset shift, I think, to move away from owning idea to letting go of an idea and putting it out to the peer group so that we're all contributing to that idea. So it's taking this sort of small idea, and then the more people you get involved into the idea becomes greater. But I think psychologically, a lot of us are afraid to let go of those ideas. And so I think that's the part of creating the conditions, is that, you know, hoarding ideas and doing it yourself, those are the conditions that leaders need to sort of break down. They've got to break down the silos within the particular business units, but also to make sure that, you know, people are feeling like it's okay to let go of an idea. You don't always have to own an idea from start to finish. It doesn't work that way anymore. You're not going to get the best solutions that way.
Yeah. And, you know, I think one of the insidious kind of phrases that hangs around companies is, when are they going to do something about it?
Yeah.
And, you know, that phrase is around for a long time. And I'm not in the business of trying to suggest that everybody ought to be running around doing everybody else's work, because that doesn't make any sense either. But the idea that of just sitting around waiting, well, I wish they would do something about it, is just not going to work. And because a lot of times the they doesn't know about it, or you have to think about, I am the they. So if I feel strongly about something, I'm going to find a way to connect with someone who can do something about it, and either we'll do it together or I'll make sure that it's being done and I'm supporting it. I'm going to be an ally for it being done somewhere. And that is part of the huge mindset. I think it's as much a team member issue as it is a leadership issue.
Mm-hmm. And, I think that we see a lot of organizations trying to bring that sort of more googly type environment, or, these sort of where they're creating these opportunities for what they refer to as collisions, so that people come together and they share ideas. But I don't think naturally we do that. And in fact, a lot of organizations that I've been working here in Toronto, I'm seeing this sort of open space concept, but a lot of people hate it. And so it's sort of like, well, why do they hate it? And, well, it's kind of noisy and I can't get my work done. So what other ways, I think, could we help our listeners figure out, again, creating the conditions to encourage more opportunities for these work groups to come together, these peers to come together to ideate?
I think there's some, in addition to that mindset, like you say, I think there's some processes almost like Match.com that need to be put into an organization environment, right? It's like, here's an issue, a problem, who wants to coalesce around it? And what you find sometimes is that if people really care about it, they show up for it.
Right.
And so you can make that happen. And what that means, though, is that, people like leaders have to let go a little bit around knowing that that's going to happen, because sometimes the idea of people being seconded or going away and work on a messy project, everybody, the first question, well, I'm going to lose that person, and, what happens to my budget, and blah, 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 blah. And so that scarcity mentality sort of takes over. And both the organization and the people that could be involved lose, right? So I think we have to be more open to thinking about these new ways to kind of really open it up to allow people to raise their hands to kind of connect with that messy, stinky problem that's been sitting out there for a long time, that can make a difference to people and to the customer.
One of the companies I've followed for many years, who it is. So it's Hit Record. And hitrecord.org. And I love some of the videos that I watch with the CEO of it, Joe. He talks a lot about reaching into the community. So here he is. He's like the head of this company. He's got this whole collaboration community really being built out by a bunch of designers. Anybody can, songwriters, designers, can come together and they can collaborate, is really the essence of of Hit Record. But one of the things that he says is, I don't know the answers. Like, he's self-admitting as a leader, I don't know the answers, but you know what? I know who does within the community. And that is it sounds so simple, but it's an amazing thing for that sort of humbleness to come out in a leader like that and use his community to get the right answers. And, we talked earlier about how the right answer comes from the actual end user who's facing the problem. So why wouldn't you include them? And it's just, again, something that seems so logical, but it doesn't often happen.
That was a great example, the Hit Record example there. I mean, because the humbleness of a leader that doesn't have all the answers, but creates the conditions for the answers to emerge.
Exactly.
That's a pretty different kind of mindset, because a lot of people have grown up watching that, that person behave in that kind of, here I am, I now have the title. So all of a sudden I became, my IQ went up 10 points or something. And that's just not the way it works. And it's certainly not the way it should work in this new emerging kind of environment.
Exactly. And when you've got teams that are working on a problem, often they can tend to go, well, we don't really know the answer. And then they look to their leader for the solution. And that's another thing that I think a leader needs to resist, is to, resist giving the answers. Again, create the conditions, as you said, to really let this team flourish. If they don't know the answers, then continue to reach into the community of peers to get the right answers. That's the reason why people are hired. People are hired to be smart creatives, right? And so being a smart creative means coming to the table with some ideas and together collaborating. So yeah, so I think that's great, Lauren. I think that we've got some really great benefits of creating conditions. So what would you say our top 3 takeaways are for our listeners today?
Well, I think first of all is that leaders, in terms of standing back and thinking about create the conditions, they have to put themselves out of the framework that we're just talking about committees or task forces or some of these, worn out old, um, just different versions of command and control. That's a whole different way. You got to step back, and leaders got to step back and say, how do I create these conditions for all this to flourish, and then be comfortable enough to let go and to allow it to happen. So I think that's one.
Right.
And I think it helps Lynette to think about looking some models out there where this is working, where some of this stuff, and to open yourself up to some of that creativity. And the second thing is that I think you really did a great job of outlining how team members ought to think. You called them creative.
Smart creative.
Yeah. And I think that's, if you're showing up at work, think about that. Think about that. You're not just there to do a transaction. You're there because you're a good thinking, capable, and think of yourself as a creator.
Yeah.
And again, that's not just like, raising your hand. That it's really kind of bringing it, really looking proactively, looking for the opportunity, and doing something about it, as opposed to just quote getting your work done. So I think those are such big thoughts, but peer-to-peer is more than just a new management kind of trendy kind of a fad. It has to be the new way of working in institutions, and otherwise the innovation's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think I just add one more thing on there. From a person who would be a peer and collaborating, I think that we got to remember that you can't hold on to your ideas anymore, and they can't be just yours. And I think that by shifting your mindset to letting go of your idea, just knowing that your idea got out, and let's say it did go somewhere, should be the recognition in itself than just saying, oh, that was my idea and I took it right to implementation, because often we know that those ideas aren't going to make it that far anyway. So learn to let go of the idea and put it into the community so that it becomes a bigger and better idea.
That is such an important point. That idea of have an abundant mindset. Don't worry. If you're doing it for the recognition only, you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Totally.
Let go. Just go. And I think that becomes more gratifying for the individual and for certainly your peers, but for the organization as well. It's an important topic, and I hope our audience and our listeners really take it to heart.
Sounds good. Me too. Thanks, Lorne. Great chatting with you. Talk to you soon.
Next time.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye.